Good day to you. My name is Teacher ARVIN, and I am very excited to bring you today's lesson. So, set your mind, ready your heart, and brace yourselves, for we will take the journey to discover the week one of 21st century literature from the Philippines and the world. Alright, so for our most essential learning competency focus, we will be learning representative texts and authors from each region, and we will also engage oral history research with focus on key personalities from students' region, province, and town. Alright, so at the end of the lesson, students should be able to, number one, know and understand the definition of literature and its values. And number two, learn the dimensions of Philippine literary history from the pre-colonial to the contemporary period. Alright, so let us start by defining literature. So, what is literature, or what is meant by literature? Alright, so what is literature? Now, literature is from the Latin word litera, which encompasses written creations within a language or culture. Now, Britannica also defines literature or sees it as a collective of written expressions. Now, Merriam-Webster's 11th edition defines literature as work displaying exceptional form. This multifaceted definition encapsulates the diverse realm of literary works, which not only reflect societal narratives but also exemplify the artistry of language. Now, literature transcends mere words, it encapsulates thoughts, our emotions, and experiences, enriching culture while offering a platform for artistic brilliance to harmonize with human expression. Alright, so the question is, why read literature? Why do we need to read literature? And of what value is the literature? Alright, so this time let us learn the importance of literature. What are those values that we can get out from reading literature? Alright, so let us start with the first importance of literature, wherein reading great literature exercises the imagination. Now, engaging with great literature sparks imagination, nurturing creativity and cognition. Now, readers construct vivid mental landscapes, characteristics, and emotions, refining cognitive flexibility, analyzing intricate plots and symbolism, hones critical thinking and empathy, fostering emotional intelligence. Now, beyond pages, literature's impact on imagination enhances cognitive growth and nuances understanding and even amplifying intellectual and emotional depth. Alright, let's have the number two, wherein reading literature transports us of our current situation into other periods and places. Now, literature's importance lies in its ability to transport us beyond our immersed reality or immediate reality. Through its pages, we journey to diverse eras and distant locales, escaping our present circumstances. It also offers a passport to the past and the unfamiliar, and enabling us to really experience different culture, viewpoints, and lives. As we immerse ourselves in the characteristic struggles, triumphs, and emotions. We really cultivate empathy and broaden our perspectives. Ultimately, literature enriches our lives by allowing us to really explore the tapestry of human experiences, transcending time and space to really connect with our essence of our shared humanity. All right, so let's move on to number three, wherein reading literature enables us to see the world through the eyes of others. Now, engaging with literature offers a unique window into diverse perspectives, allowing us to really step into the minds of characters, authors, and cultures different from our own. Now, through the eyes or through the pages of a book, we explore emotions, experiences, and viewpoints, broadening our empathy and understanding. By immersing ourselves in various narratives, we also cultivate a richer appreciation for the complexity of human existence. Aside from that, literature transcends boundaries and even fostering connections between people and eras, while gifting us the capacity to navigate the world with increased sensitivity, insight, and more profound grasp of human condition. All right, so let's move on to number four, wherein great works of literature have played a fundamental role in shaping society. You know what? Philippine literature has played a pivotal role in shaping the cultural and social landscape of our country. From the ancient oral traditions to contemporary written works, literature in the Philippines has, acted as a mirror reflecting the nation's history, struggles, and triumphs. Also, literature, it has preserved indigenous knowledge, resistance against colonial rule, and even expressions of identity through the works of writers like Jose Rizal and Nico Joaquin. It has sparked national consciousness, even fostering a sense of unity and pride among Filipinos. And all right, so this time let us move on to number five, wherein reading literature encourages contemplation and improves our language and vocabulary skills. Now, Philippine literature has played a pivotal role in shaping the cultural and societal landscape of our country, as I made mention a while ago. Now, in here, literature does not only change the cultural perspectives of the Philippines, but through the help of literature, we can learn a lot out from it. We will learn or enhance our vocabulary skills, written and oral discourse. It's because it also improves our vocabulary skills. Like, for example, if you are to read literary pieces and you encountered unfamiliar words out from those literary pieces that you are reading, well, tendency is to look for a dictionary, right? Now, after that, after looking for a dictionary, you'll check the unfamiliar words which you encountered while reading the literary piece. Now, in that sense, you are also improving your vocabulary skills, honing your understanding about English language. Alright, so this time let us proceed to the very last importance of literature, wherein reading literature helps us understand humanity. Now, literature offers a profound lens into a human experience and unraveling emotions, motivations, and relationships across cultures and time. Now, through characteristics and narratives, it illuminates our shared struggles, aspirations, and complexities, fostering empathy and a deeper grasp of the diverse facets of humanity. Alright, so this time let us move on to the dimensions of Philippine literary history. You know, these dimensions collectively contribute to the depth and authenticity of Philippine literary narratives, painting a vivid picture of the nation's intricate tapestry of cultures, languages, and geographical context. All right, so there are dimensions of Philippine literary history. These three dimensions are the geography, second is the language, and last one is the ethnicity. Let's proceed to the first one or the first dimension, which is the geography. Now, geography, the geographical setting of a story, is crucial in understanding the cultural and environmental influences on characters and their actions. Stories set in different regions of the Philippines, wherever rural or urban, provide insights into the local traditions, landscapes, and ways of life. Now, geography refers to the study of places and the relationships between people and the environment, where it also answers the question where did the story happen or takes place. The second dimension of Philippine literary history, we have the language. Now, language used in literary work holds cultural and historical significance. The choice of language, be it indigenous languages, it could be Spanish or English, conveys the social political context and the intended audience of the text. Now, the linguistic nuances really reveal the writer's identity and the broader linguistic diversity of the Philippines. Alright, so this time let us move on to the last dimension, which is the ethnicity. Now, what is meant by ethnicity as the dimension of Philippine literary periods or history? Now, Philippine literature is a mosaic of diverse ethnic groups, each in distinct cultural practices, traditions, and view or worldviews. Now, literature often portrays the richness of these ethnic identities, highlighting the unique customs, the rituals, and beliefs. Stories may delve into struggles and triumphs of different ethnic communities, reflecting their historical experiences and contributions. Alright, so this time, let us move on to the Philippine literary periods. So we will be learning the different periods in the Philippines. What are those literary pieces existed in each period? So this is just a brief introduction of the topics that we will be learning in the subject 21st century literature from the Philippines and the world. Alright, so here are the Philippine literary periods in the Philippines, of course. Number one is the pre-colonial period from the early times of 1564. Second, we have the Spanish period wherein it started on 1565 to 1898, and we also have the American period from 1898 to 1946, and Japanese period from 1941 to 1945. Alright, to continue, we have Under the Republic 1946 to 1985 and contemporary period 1986 to the present, and of course the 21st century literature. Okay, so let us start with pre-colonial period, early times to 1564. I know that you already have the prior knowledge of the different literary periods in time because you've already learned that in your Araling Panlipunan subjects when you were still grade 7 to grade 10. So this is just a recap of the topics that we will be learning under 21st century literature from the Philippines and the world. But of course, we will be enhancing you with different literary pieces. You will be crafting different literary pieces as we go on with our discussion. So let us start with the first one, which is the pre-colonial period, early times to 1564. Alright, so let us move on to the pre-colonial period, early times to 1564. You know what? There are different Philippine literary periods, as I made mention a while ago from the previous slides. One of it is the pre-colonial, early times to 1564. Now, long before the arrival of the Spaniards, ancient Filipinos were living in scattered barangays and ruled by different chieftains or datu. Although they were living separately, they were similar in many ways, like their religion, like their mode of dressing, their houses, the system of government, the marriage practices, and economic activities. In short, they were refined and civilized. They possesses a distinct culture that distinguishes them from the other race. Now, the roots of the Philippine literature can be traced back prior to the colonization of the Spaniards. And even the literature in this period is any literature which existed before the Spaniards entered the Philippine soil. Now let's move on to the next slide. Now, in the pre-colonial era, knowledge transfers relied on observation, imitation, and practice. Now, formal education systems were absent at that time, prompting learning through experiential wisdom. Now, oral traditions conveyed history, culture, while community elders shared practical skills. Reading and writing were taught within their families, fostering the basic literacy only. Now, this approach emphasized communal bonds and hands-on learning, reflecting the era's reliance on shared knowledge and close knot in interactions for cultural continuity. Now, in this era, the only way again to really transmit knowledge is through observation, imitation, and practice. Now, in the pre-colonial Philippines, houses were typically constructed using lightweight and locally sourced materials. Indigenous architectural designs varied across regions, adapting to the environment and climate. Now, in the pre-colonial, nipa palm leaves, bamboo rattan, and cogon grasses were commonly used for walls and roofs, allowing for natural ventilation. So houses were built on lightweight materials. So, question: why do you think Filipinos during the pre-colonial built houses on trees, near the rivers, or on mountains? Now, houses were raised on stilts to protect against flooding and pests or protect them from wild animals. And the flexible structures harmonize with the tropical surroundings. You know what? The resources construction approach showcase the indigenous people's deep understanding for their environment and their ability to craft or create functional, sustainable dwellings suited to their way of life. So they built houses near on trees. They built houses near rivers, near seas, or on mountains. It's for their protection at the same time for their source of living. Okay, so we have here the male clothing and the female clothing. Now, the clothing during the pre-colonial, for male, we have the upper part which is named as kangan, a jacket with short sleeves. Meanwhile, lower part for male is named as bahag, strip of cloth wrapped around the waist and in between the legs. And of course, they have the headgear or putong, which symbolizes bravery at that time. So if you are wearing red putong on your head, if the dato will wear red putong at that time, so it symbolizes bravery of the dato. Now, for the female clothing, we have the upper part, which is the baro or kamesa, a jacket with short sleeves. Meanwhile, we also have the patajong or saya, a woven tube skirt made from cloth or a piece of cloth. Then we also have a tapis, which is a rectangular piece of cloth worn around the waist. Let us proceed to the social classes during the pre-colonial. Now, these social classes were based on birth right, inherited status, and occupation, and they helped define the societal or social structure of the pre-colonial Philippine societies and influence the roles and interactions of individuals within these communities. Now, they were divided into three. Number one is in the upper part, or the higher class of society during the pre-colonial. We have the datu, the nobles, the maginoo, or raha. So that's the highest class of society from before. Now, the nobles were the upper class or nobility. So they held political power, owned land, and often governed communities. Nobles' families were considered the ruling elite and had privileges such as wearing fine clothing, elaborate tattoos, and using prestigious accessories. So they were considered as the high class of society during the pre-colonial period. Alright, the next one, or the middle class during the pre-colonial, were the Timawa or the freemen. Now, the Timawa were the free commoners or the middle class during the pre-colonial period. They were skilled farmers, artisans, and warriors of the datus or the nobles. While they didn't possess the same level of power as the nobles, Timawa still and individuals held respective roles within their communities and were sometimes chosen as a local leader at that time. Alright, let's move on to the third and the last social classes during the pre-colonial, which are the slaves or the alipin. Now, the alipin were the lower class or slaves. They were further divided into two categories. Number one is the aliping namamahay and the aliping sagigilid. Now, aliping namamahay, those who could own property and pay tribute, and aliping sagigilid, those who were completely dependent or on their masters. Now, alipin were also often in service to Maginoo families and performed various tasks like farming and households. Alright, so let's move on to the government system. If today the branches of the government were divided or are divided into legislative branch, second the executive branch, and the judicial branch. So long before in the pre-colonial, the government system was called barangay. So if today we're being managed by the president, the vice president, the senators, there were congressmen, mayors within our city and municipality. So long before, it's only the datu who manage and rule the barangay. Alright, to continue with the government system, number one, there was no national government at that time. So if today we have the president, vice president, senators, and mayor, congressman that govern our community or our nation. So long before there was no national government. However, there were many independent barangays and datos. So it means, but there were no strong enough to unite the archipelago into one nation. It means that there were a lot of datus, but no strong enough datu to unite the whole archipelago into one nation. Some barangays, however, united to form a confederation. Now, when we say confederation, we are referring to the alliances between one barangay to the other or one datu to the other. Now, it was headed and ruled by a raha or a datu. All right, so to continue, let us move on to the power and the functions of the dato during the pre-colonial. Number one is the implementing laws. The dato is the one who implement laws within the barangay. He also maintained the peace and order. So say for example, if there were misunderstandings between the people in the barangay, it's always the dato who maintains the peace and order during the pre-colonial period. Aside from that, the Datu also give protection to subjects or to the people within the barangay since the people were paying taxes to the Datu. Then, the fourth one, he also made the law with the assistance of group of elders who gave advice. Of course, with the help of the elders, the Datu can craft laws or rules within the barangay. Then a newly enacted law was made known to the public through a town carrier who called Omalohokan. So the task of Omalohokan is to do bandilyo within the barangay of the current um, laws, regulations within the barangay. Now, the Datu also acted as a judge during the trial and determination of guilt. So, if you commit mistakes during the pre-colonial, it's only the Datu who will serve as a judge during the period. Wherein today, we have lawyers to protect us with our mistakes, right? So long before in the pre-colonial, it's always the Datu who will judge you with your if you were accused at that time. So it was easy for the Datu to run for the barangay since the population it was very small. So let us proceed to the taxation during the pre-colonial period. In the pre-colonial Philippines, there was no formal monetary taxation system comparable to the modern taxation. However, various forms, tribute, labor, and goods were collected by the local leaders or chieftains at that time. Now, the taxation, ancient Filipinos practiced paying taxes at that time for the protection they received from the Datu. So that's why the Datu created alliances with other or have alliances with other barangay to protect their subjects or the people within the barangay. And in return, the people during the pre-colonial will also pay taxes to the Datu. Second, we have the collected tax is called buwis at that time. Then family members of datus were enjoying free taxes. So if you belong to the noble class, to the high class society, if you are a relative of the or relatives of the datu, you're free to have to pay taxes. Then non-payment of taxes is already punishable during the period. Alright, so I already made mention a while ago about alliances or confederation of different barangays to the other. So these alliances or confederation among barangays were formed, and the purpose of this is for alliances was for trading, peace, and mutual protection. So it means that one datu will have his alliance to the other barangay for the mutual protection, for the exchange of goods and services, for the trading system, and for the barter system at that time. Now, these alliances were sealed through a blood compact or sanduguan to really ensure conformity, sincerity, and commitment of the chieftains at that time. Alright, so let's move on to the judicial process during the pre-colonial period, the trial, determination, and guilt. If today we have lawyers to protect us in court, long before it's only the datu who will judge you with the following. So let's have number one. Judicial process was influenced by religion. Of course, it was being influenced by the religion at that time. Then second, holding lighted candles by suspected offenders. The man whose candle died out first would be declared as culprit. So it's somehow creepy, right? Unlike today, we have lawyers to protect us in court. Then number two, we have ordering the suspect to plunge into a deep river with their lances. The first one to come out to the surface would be considered or adjudged as a guilty party. Just like in Amaya, if you were able to watch Amaya, so it was also present. This example was evident at that time. Then number four, we have suspected wrongdoer would be made to chew uncooked rice. If the rice was swallowed easily, it was believed that the person was innocent. If the rice caused choking and discomfort to a person, it was seen as a sign of guilt. So come to think of it, if you are to live on that era, you will experience the injustice system of the government, right? Unlike today, we already have lawyers that would help us in court. Now, let's move on to the courtship and marriage during the pre-colonial period. Now, during the pre-colonial, they have the so-called dowry. Now, this dowry refers to the property, wealth, goods, or money that groom's family gives to the bride or her family as part of marriage arrangement. Now, these bigay kaya, panghimuyat himaraw, or bigay suso were considered as dowry at that time. So let's discuss further. Now, what is meant by bigay kaya? Now, bigay kaya consisted a piece of land or gold. Meanwhile, panghimuyat, or groom's parents' gift. We also have himaraw, groom's parents' gift payment for raising the future bride during her infancy period. And we also have the bigay suso, the wet nurse who also received a dowry at that time. Alright, so let's move on to the courtship and marriage during the pre-colonial period. Now, mixed marriage is not common because it was common to the couples belonging to different social classes. So usually this mixed marriage or arranged marriage was only evident to the noble class society during the pre-colonial period. Now, there were several grounds for divorce at that time. We have the adultery, abandonment on the part of the husband. We also have cruelty and insanity. In accordance to the religious beliefs, before Roman Christianity and Islam were introduced to the natives, to the pre-colonial people, they already worshipped many gods and goddesses. So they even have the name on it, so they even prayed on it depending on the occasions or celebrations. Like for example, the Bathala, which is considered the supreme being, the Idinayali, which is the god of agriculture, Sidapa, the god of death, Agni, the god of fire, Balangao, the god of rainbow, Mandaragat, Mandarangan, sorry, the god of war, Lalahon, the god of harvest, and Si Ginarugan, the god of health. So they believed in the different gods and goddesses during the pre-colonial period. Aside from the different gods and goddesses, they also believed in different superstitious beliefs at that time. So, aswang, duwende, kapre, mangkukulam, tikbalang tiyanak were already present during the pre-colonial period. Alright, so let us move on to the ornaments during the pre-colonial. Now, females wore gold and precious stones, armlets, leglets, golden earrings. Putting tattoos over bodies were already practiced at that time. So, females wear tattoos during the pre-colonial period, wore tattoos during the pre-colonial period, and even different accessories. Now, for males, having tattoos were admired because it signified bravery in war, meaning you had number of people killed at that period. They also inserted gold between their teeth as an ornament. So ornaments were already evident during the pre-colonial period. As we made mention a while ago about the observation, imitation, and hands-on practice, so in the pre-colonial era, knowledge transmission relied on observation, imitation, and practice. Formal education was absent, as I made mention. Instead, parents guided children in art of reading and writing through keen observation and imitations of elder skills. Practically, wisdom flowed from one generation to the next one. This existential approach fostered a deep connection between learners and their surroundings, nurturing holistic understanding, and oral tradition intertwined with these methods, cementing cultural heritage. Now, this organic familial approach on education underscore the significance of practical expertise and communal wisdom, shaping a unique form of knowledge to transfer. Now, as I made mention, there was no formal education. Children were taught to read and write by their parents. Education in earlier times had a pragmatic focus on survival. Now, fathers imparted hunting, fishing, and agricultural skills to males, ensuring their self reliance. Mothers, on the other hand, managed households and trained females in essential domestic tasks. This practical knowledge was vital in sustenance and self-sufficiency, forming the core of their education during the pre-colonial. Such gender-specific teachings shape individuals into capable contributions or contributors within their societal roles, laying a fundamental and communal well-being through specialized skills. So they learn through imitation, observation, and practice during the pre-colonial period. Let us move on to the language and system of writing. So there were eight considered major languages at that time. So we have the Tagalog, Ilocano, Pangasinan, Pampangan, Sugbuhanon, Hiligaynon, Maguindanao, and Samarno. So these were considered eight major languages during the pre-colonial period. Though it's an oral tradition, however, in the late pre-colonial, some languages were already evident at that time. On the late pre-colonial, Tagalog people developed the Baybayin. Baybayin is a pre-colonial script from the Philippines used by Tagalog and people before Spanish colonization, comprising 17 characteristics or characters representing syllables. It also conveyed communication and records on surfaces like leaves and bamboos. Now, each character denoted a consonant with presently revitalized. Baybayin connects modern Filipinos to indigenous heritage. While its historical use was limited, it still symbolizes a cultural bridge, allowing contemporary generations to explore their pre-colonial past and preserve linguistic and artistic traditions. During the pre-colonial era, literature thrived through oral tradition, and as writing systems were absent, legends and myths considered origin stories and insights into life and the world. Knowledge transmission relied on observation, imitation, and practical experience, as a formal education was lacking at that time. Now, parents taught reading, writing to children, fostering skills through familiar guidance and hands on learning. Now, literature is just being transmitted from one generation to the other orally. Now, pre-colonial literature centered on communal life, narrating shared experiences in the village. Stories revolved around food gathering, childcare, nature's interactions, and other everyday occurrences. Now, these narratives encapsulated the essence of communities' existence, preserving their wisdom and heritage through the oral tradition. Now, pre-colonial literature tells the accounts of great people or supernatural heroes as well as stories of gods or different gods and goddesses. The literary forms common in this period are riddles, proverbs, folk songs, epics, folk tales, legends, and myths. Now let's have the first one, which is the riddle. Now the riddle uses the metaphor between, or because it reveals a subtle resemblances between two unlike objects. One's wit is put in the test in answering the riddles. Second is the proverbs or nuggets. These are nuggets of wisdom that show the community's norms, beliefs, and values during the pre-colonial. These are composed in short rhyming verses. We also have the folk songs. Now, folk songs expresses the hopes and aspirations of the people's lifestyles as well as their loves. Now, lastly, we have the legends. It explains the origins of things, while epics and folk tales explains how the words was created or how these creatures possess certain traits. Some of our popular epics, we have the Hudhud of Ifugao, Lamang of Ilocano, and we also have the Hinilawud of Sulu. Now we will be learning this one as we go on with our discussion as we move forward with the next topics or new topics in the next coming days. Here are some examples of the different literature during the pre-colonial period. We have the folk speeches or riddles, we have the folk songs, folk narratives, indigenous rituals, mimetic dance, and even proverbs already exist during the pre-colonial. So we will be learning these stuff as we go on with our discussion on the pre-colonial literature. Alright, so this time let us proceed to the next period in the Philippines, or the literary period, which is the Spanish period from 1865 to 1898. The Spanish period 1565 to 1898 marked the colonization era, commencing with Miguel Lopez de Legazpi's arrival in 1565 as the first Spanish Governor General. Literature blossomed under his reign, extending until the 1872 Cavite Revolt. Over more than 3 centuries, Spanish influence altered the Filipinos' lives significantly. The people adopted Catholicism, underwent name changes, and underwent baptism, showcasing profound shifts in their cultural and religious identities. During the Spanish period 1565 to 1898, Spanish became the dominant literary language at that time. The colonizers employed Catholicism to supplant indigenous traditions. Now, Filipinos' lifestyles during the Spanish period transformed as well, adopting stone and brick houses, elegant furniture like pianos and modern kitchen utensils, carriages, trains, and boats, facilitated travel, festivals, celebrated saints, the Pope, and governors, while cockfights, horse races. The theaters provided recreation. Now, this period saw a profound fusion of Spanish influence and local culture, shaping the Philippine social cultural landscape. Now, the language during the Spanish period became the literary language at that time, and even the colonizers used the Catholic religion to substitute the existing traditions. Now, in the pre-colonial, if they believed in the different gods and goddesses, but hala, some of god and goddesses that they worship, now it was totally put into change during the Spanish period. During these times, many changes occurred in the lives of Filipinos. They embraced the Catholic religion, changed their names, and were baptized. During the Spanish period from 1565 to 1898, distinct social classes emerged, including the affluent and landowners. Some Filipinos pursued education in fields like medicine, law, agriculture, and teaching, contributing to a growing educated class during the Spanish period. Lifestyle shifts were evident as well, with the adoption of stone and brick houses, ornate furniture like piano and advanced kitchen utensils. Travel options were also expanded with carriages, trains, and boats. Festivals celebrated saints, the popes, and the governors, while activities such as cockfighting, horse racing, and theater offered leisure pursuits at that time. This period marked the intersection of Spanish influence and local customs, reshaping society and cultural practices. Now, it was totally put into change during the Spanish colonization. The prolonged Spanish colonization of the Philippines left a profound impact on the literature. One is that the native Alibata script was replaced by the Roman alphabet. Number two, we have Christian doctrine teachings formed the foundations of religious practices during the Spanish colonization. We also have number three, Spanish as a literary language contributed numerous words to the local vocabulary. These changes reflect the fusion of Spanish culture and Philippine heritage, shaping the linguistic, religious, and written aspects of the nation's literary landscapes. To continue, European legends and traditions became integrated into our songs, corridos, and moromoros. Ancient literature was compiled and translated into Tagalog and other dialects in the region or in a different region in the Philippines. Then, numerous grammar books were published in Filipino, including Tagalog, Ilocano, and Visayan. Lastly, periodicals of the era often carried a religious undertone, reflecting the prevailing sentiments of the time. During the Spanish period, literature took an predominantly religious tone. The first printed book in the Philippines, the Doctrina Cristiana, was authored by Father Juan Di Palencia in Tagalog and Father Domingo Nieva in Spanish. So there were two versions. These Spaniards invalidated all existing writing systems during this era, resulting in a significant linguistic and cultural shift. So Filipinos were no longer allowed to use the baybayin as a form of linguistic writing. Instead, they changed it into Roman Catholic ways of writing. Aside from the Doctrina Cristiana, the other literary works were Ang Barlaan at Josefat. We also have Pasyon, Urbana at Felisa. There were also many recreational plays during that time such as Sinaculo, Zarzuela, Moro Moro, and even Balagtasan was evident on that period. Jose Rizal's novels No Limitame and El Filibusterismo and poems were the conclusion of the propaganda movement. His two novels portrays corruption and oppression by the Spanish government. And Andres Bonifacio, who headed the Philippine Revolution, wrote Ang Pag-ibig sa Tinubuang Lupa, which we will discuss further as we go on with our topic. We also have Emilio Jacinto, the revolution's brain, wrote political essays expressed in the native language. So all of these literary pieces we will be learning as we move on to the Spanish colonization or the literature during the Spanish period. During the Spanish period, the religious orders controlled the printing process until the 19th century. Now, in the late 19th century, the propaganda movement emerged among young Filipino expatriates aiming for reform. Now, this movement reflecting the growing desire for change and autonomy in the face of Spanish colonial rule. Alright, so let us move on to the next literary period under the American period from 1898 to 1946. During the American period from 1898 to 1946, now free public education was implemented for all children, and Thomasites were considered the first teachers, with English introduced as a medium of instruction. Now, after more than 300 years of Spanish colonization, Filipino revolutionists triumphed, leading on raising of the Philippine flag by Emilio Aguinaldo on June 12, 1898, symbolizing independence. Now, Emilio Aguinaldo was appointed as the first president of the Philippine Republic. Although his presidency was brief in duration, the American colonization era marked a significant shift of education and political landscapes for the Philippines. During the American period from 1898 to 1946, the adoption of English as a medium of instruction exposed Filipinos to Anglo-American perspectives, shaping not only literature but also the mindset of educated ones. Now, this era saw a resurgence in Filipino writing as nationalism persisted undeterred. Writers engaged in various literary forms such as news reporting, poetry, stories, plays, essays, and novels. Their works also vividly portrayed their patriotism and yearning for independence, reflecting the strong connection between literature and the people's collective aspirations. So let us proceed to the characteristics of literature during that time. So we have nationalism, freedom of speech, experience, search on the use of new medium, which is the English language. They also influence the schools, the new education system during the American period in the Philippines. We have the cleanliness and hygiene, English language, politics, and even the freedom of speech was evident during the American period in the Philippines. During the American period, now Philippine literature often emulated American writing style. So they copied some literary works or ways of writing. Filipino writers engaged in a diverse range of literary forms, including news reporting, poetry, short stories, plays, essays, and novels. Now, this period witnessed a significant influence of American literary models on Filipino literature, reflecting the cultural exchange and the impact of colonial rule. Now, in this period, the following writers and their works were notable. We have Paz Marquez Piñetes, who wrote Dead Stars, was published and was made landmark of the maturity of the Filipino writers in English. Now, writing is borrowed, tongue while writing about Filipino customs and traditions still became prominent among major Filipino fictionists in English. How My Brother Leon Brought Home a Wife by Manuel Arguella showed the scenery folkways of Ilocandia during the American period in the Philippines. The stars to continue, the stars of NVM Gonzalez and star Vicente Madali Gonzalez boasted the scenery and customs and traditions of Mindoro while depicting the characteristics or the characters in human dilemma of nostalgia and poverty. Other noted fictionists were Francisco Arcelana and Jose Garcia Villa, which we will also be learning as we go on with our discussions under the American wisdom in the Philippines. To continue, let us move on to the next period, which is the Japanese period from 1941 to 1945. Indeed, the period between 1941 and 1945 marked a significant interruption in the development of Philippine literature due to the Japanese occupation or colonization. The Japanese occupation stiff-led the freedom of speech and press, leading to a halt in the progression of the Philippine literature in English and other languages, while censorship limited most publications. Some like Tribune and Philippine Review were allowed. Under these strict surveillance, many writers shifted their focus in writing in Filipino, reflecting the complex dynamics of a nation, grappling the colonial pressures, and striving for the cultural continuity amidst adversity. So, between this period from 1941 to 1945, the development of Philippine literature was interrupted due to the Japanese colonization. So, there were writers who transitioned themselves to writing in the Japanese language and in Tagalog instead of writing the English language or English literature, since Japanese people at that time won't allow Filipinos to construct literary pieces in or craft literary pieces in English. Now, the Liwayway publication during the Japanese occupation was placed under strict surveillance. Except for the Tribune and the Philippine Review, most newspapers were stopped by the Japanese because of prohibitions. Writing in English experienced a halt, and this had an advantageous effect on the Filipino literature, which experienced renewed attention because writers in English turned to writing in Filipino. So some newspapers were put into strict surveillance because they were writing against the Japanese during the Japanese occupation in the Philippines. So what came out during the Japanese occupation were journalistic writings. Journalists include Salvador P. Lopez, Wilfredo Maria Guerrero, Raul Manglapus, and Carlos Bulusan. So as we go on with our topics, we will also be learning some of these or few literary authors in the Philippines. We also have few writers under the Japanese occupation in the Philippines. We have Nick Joaquin wrote The Woman Who Looked Like Lazarus. A few poems were written by Fred Ruiz Castro. F.D. Casiano wrote essays in the Philippine Review. We also have Carlos P. Romulo won the Pulitzer Prize for his works I Saw the Philippines, I See the Philippine Rise, and The Mother America and My Brother America. So again, here are a few of the literary writers during the Japanese occupation in the Philippines. The next literary period in the Philippines, we have the Under the Republic from 1946 to 1985. During this time, they lectured, observed, traveled, studied, and familiarized themselves with the cultural scene in that country. This gave Filipino writers the opportunity to keep up with the literary and artistic trends of the US. Now, post war poetry and fiction were dominated by writers in English who were educated and trained in writers' workshops in the United States or England. During the Under the Republic from 1946 to 1985, in the 1950s, every artist, writer, musician, critic, or academician was given a grant to stay in the US through the Education Exchange Program or the Fulbright program. So if you are eligible enough to apply for that, then you will have a chance to study abroad and to be a scholar of the Fulbright program. Alright, so we have here a few of the literary pieces during the Under the Republic. We have Macario Pineda's Ginto sa Makiling, 1946 was the first work that appeared after the Second World War. We have Steven Javella's Without Seeing the Dawn in 1947 and Alberto Tiempo's Watch in the Night are novels about war. And we also have the last one, the Armando Hernandez Lua ng Buaya, deal with class struggle. So as I made mention from about the different literary pieces a while ago, we will also be learning these literary pieces as we move on with our next discussion for the next coming weeks. We also have Nico King's works deal with the country's various heritages and historical events such as The Woman Who Had Two Neighbors, a portrait of an artist as Filipino and May the Eve. Some of the writers who had been educated and trained in workshops in the US and be part of the scholarship program were part of the scholarship program, which is the Fulbright. And England are Alberto and Edith Tiempo, Francisco Arcelia, Ricardo de Metelo, Amador Daggio, Carlos Angeles, and Liam Gonzalez was also part of it, and Benvenido and Santos. Most of them returned to the Philippines to teach, and they were also part of the Fulbright Scholar. Alright, let us move on to the contemporary period from 1986 to the present. The Philippine literature in Tagalog was revived during this period. Most themes in writing dealt with the Japanese brutalities of the poverty of life under the Japanese government and the brave guerrilla exploits. Now, the development of the Philippine literature in various languages continues, especially with the new publications after the martial law years. Now, the contemporary period from 1986 to the present. Now, many young people became activists to ask for changes in the government. Now, in this expression of this desire for change, keen were the writings of some youth who were fired with nationalism in order to emphasize the importance of their petitions. The youth became completely rebellious during this period. This was not only in the bloody demonstrations, in the sidewalk expressions, but also in literature. Now, campus newspapers showed rebellious emotions. The once aristocratic writers developed awareness for society. They held pens and wrote on placards in red paint, which is an equivalent to the word makibaka, which is to dare. This period also is the irreverence, the lack of respect for the poor, reached its peak during this period of the mass revolution. It was also during this period that bomba films that discredit our ways as a Filipino started to come out. So, in this contemporary period, this was the period of activism and literary revolution. Writers during this period use words to confront martial law and repression. In the early contemporary, it was in this time when writers' workshops proliferated. award bodies, annual competitions, and publications provide the incentives for writers to keep producing literary works. Now, behind these scenes, oral literature flourish in the outlying communities of the Cebuanos, the Ilocanos, and Tagalogs, the Samals, and even the Ilonggos. Now, the Philippine novels has remained social realist, or the themes remained social realist during the early contemporary period. Among the liberationist writers were Jose Lacaba, Epifanio San Juan, Rogelio Mangajas, Lamberto Antonio, Lilia Cuendoza, and Jesus Manuel Santiago. The Galian sa atin ng tula nurtured Manila writers and writing during the darkest periods of martial law. Other contemporary poets are Marjorie Ebasco and Marley Alunan, as well as Ricardo de Angria and Luisa Aguilar Carino. Some of the literary awards are the Don Palanco Memorial Awards for Literature, the Philippine Free Press, the Philippine Graphic, Home Life, and Panorama Literary Awards. So awards for literature were already present at the early contemporary. Now, let's proceed to the Carlos Palanca Memorial Awards for Literature, which I made mention. Now, it was established in the year 1950s. The Palanca Memorial Awards for Literature had been giving cash prizes for short story writers, for poetry writers, in one actually writing in incentive to Filipino writers. Now, the prizes come from Latoneda Incorporated and firm founder by the late Carlos Palanca Sr. Thank you for listening, and I hope that you've learned a lot from our discussion today. I hope that you've learned the definition of literature and its importance, the dimensions of literary periods. You were able to grasp each definition and the introduction to the different literary pieces or introduction to the literature of the Philippines from the pre-colonial to the contemporary. Thank you for watching, and I hope that you will study the video lecture. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.